Hey everybody, this is Lisa Harper, and you're listening to the Not Ready Yet Curating Conversations for the Aging Journey podcast. This is the show that changes the conversations we have with our loved ones about aging and life decisions. Let's have more honest conversations where we speak the quiet parts out loud. Today's guest is Dr. Keith Ludwick, author of ScamSmart, an expert's guide to spotting scams and living the fraud-free life. He is the president and CEO of Stop Scamming Me. I love that name. An organization committed to protecting older adults from the growing threat of scams and fraud. Dr. Ludwick brings a unique blend of experience to this mission. He is a retired FBI special agent with over 22 years of service, a U.S. Air Force veteran. Thank you for your service on both parts. And a highly respected cybersecurity and biodefense expert. In addition to his advocacy work, he runs the Ludwick Agency, a private investigative and security consulting firm. He's also an educator teaching graduate and doctoral students on topics like terrorism, cyber threats, and intelligence. Dr. Ludwick has dedicated his career to protecting people, first through national service and now by empowering families and aging adults to stay safe in a rapidly changing digital world. So Dr. Ludwick, thank you so much for being here today to help us talk through and understand and protect ourselves from scams.
Thanks for having me, Lisa. I'm pleased to be here.
Great. So what inspired you to dedicate your career from this point forward to educating older adults and their families on scams?
Well, about 2.5, 3 years, I retired from the FBI about 7 or 8 years ago. Really spent most of my time involved in education. Decided I needed a little bit of a change, so I gave up some of my teaching duties and opened up my private investigative firm about 2 years ago. You know, that's one of those things that once it's in your blood, it's kind of hard to get out of your blood. And I really enjoyed that. And what I noticed was while I was doing my work is about every week or so, I was getting a call from a family member or a friend of a family member. And it was, oh, my brother got scammed out of $10,000. What do I do? Or my sister's neighbor got scammed out of $20,000. What do I do? I had a colleague that I used to teach with at a small school, and she said her husband had been scammed out of $150,000. What do we do? And it all kind of came to a head when a friend of my wife's, single woman, 75 years old, fixed income, but lives a modest life. And she lost her house. She was scammed out of her house. And we weren't able to get the information from her right away, but over the course of a week or so, we were able to figure out that somebody had kind of coerced her into signing over a quitclaim for her house. And when we started digging into it, we realized this person that did that had done it 3 other times to 3 other people. So now you have this scammer out there that has 4 houses that they are going to inherit when these seniors pass on. That's when my wife and I knew we kind of had to do something. But it's really hard to, and I'm sure we'll talk about this later, the recovery rate for scams is the money's gone, right? In most cases, the money is gone, and we can dig into that a little bit later. But so what you want to do is you want to get ahead of it. You want to move upstream. And so we really started Stop Scamming Me to get in front of it by offering education and training and seminars and whatever we can do to help the seniors not become targets of scams.
And that's where it comes in, is the education. Like, how do you not be a victim? Phones dinging, ringing, everybody's trying to get you in some way. At all ages. But for the older adult who tends to answers the phone, listens, what we're trying to tell people today is, hey, educate yourself and educate your family, educate your loved ones. What are some of the numbers, high level, of what we're looking at and how much money's been lost, or can we quantitate this?
Yes. So the FBI publishes statistics every year on scams and fraud, but these numbers are best guesses. A A lot of scams go unreported, and we can talk about why later on in our conversation. But the latest numbers for 2024 is that 4.9 billion billion dollars were scammed from just seniors. Just seniors. That's not everybody. The average loss for a senior in 2024 was $84,000.
Oh my gosh, the average?
Now, if you're a statistic nerd, right, then that doesn't sound right, because most of the time what you're uh, hearing about are people losing $500 or $1,000. But what really skews the numbers are about once a month or two you hear about the 1 million, 1.5 million, or the house, right, that's been lost, and that's really driving up those averages. And that's up in 2023. It was 34,000, I think, or 39,000. So it's over double in just
Yeah,
1 year.
that's so
Uh,
significant.
so
And oh, go ahead.
I, I really equate this epidemic. I call it an epidemic of scams, with kind of like the war on drugs. Is that you'll never stop it. This is one of those things. It's just too lucrative. There will always be victims. It's like there will always be people who will use illegal drugs, and it's unfortunate, but that's reality, and you kind of have to look at that. But what we can do is we can do our best to try to reduce it and get it down to as minimal as possible. So if I can educate somebody to recognize a scam when they've lost $200 as opposed to $100,000, right, that's a win. That's a win. Or if I can have somebody recognize that the phone call that they're getting is probably a scam, just preventing that one scam could, because scams build on themselves.
And so, what is the reality of recovering funds?
So the reality is that 95% of the time the money's gone. It's just gone. And there are several factors that are influencing that. One of them is just the reality of law enforcement, and as we talked earlier, scams are going like this. And there was just an article in AARP talking about the FBI giving a press release about it. I live in Clearwater, Florida, Pinellas County. Our sheriff's office here will not investigate a scam less than $50,000. The FBI will not investigate a scam less than $1 million. There's just too much there, and we don't have enough people to investigate it. So that is the reality. The second part of that equation is why we can't recover funds is a lot of the times the scams are using money, cash, gift cards, or, believe it or not, precious metals, gold and silver, and those are untraceable. I mean, once you've given somebody $200 in cash in an envelope, it's gone, right? And even if you trace the serial numbers, it's just gone. And gift cards and precious metals are the exact same way. In contrary to what a lot of people think, if you do a transaction in Bitcoin, there is a possibility that some of that can be traced, depending on circumstances and situation. But it takes specialized people to do that. And the reality is that if you lost $5,000, it usually private investigators, and this sounds like they're taking advantage of people, but these are small businesses. They need to make money. So they charge a fee to do this, and usually the fee is about 10%. So if you lose $5,000, it's not worth anybody's time or effort to get just for $500 to spend, the hours and hours and hours it takes to trace Bitcoin. So usually it's not until you start getting into big numbers like 75, 100,000, 150,000 or more where it starts getting where you could probably get your money back, at least a portion of your money back. Maybe.
And
And
that's
then
with
the
the help
last,
of a private investigator at that point.
right. And there are some, the FBI does have some resources, and we'll talk about that in just a minute, that will help. But again, it's not a guarantee. You're probably not getting your money back. The last element there is that, as I talked, the average is 84,000, but the vast majority of the scams are low dollar amounts. So you're talking $50, $200, $250, $500. And while every dollar lost to a scammer is obviously horrible, the reality is that most people could probably absorb a $200 loss without a significant impact to their lifestyle or their savings or their retirement. I mean, um, if if you're living so close to your finances that you lost $200, the odds are you probably wouldn't have given up that $200 in the first place because you needed that for some sort of food or rent or something like that. So those small dollar amounts are not reported. That's why we think that those numbers that I gave you earlier are underreported by 50, 60%. So it could be worse. Um, so that's a lot of the reason why you just wouldn't get your money back.
And the difference were, saying, 250 here, $250 here versus, I think you mentioned a friend in the beginning that 150,000, to make that up later in life, we're talking about this on the mature life side. That's not an option for most people. So you start getting into six digits there, and that is going to be very devastating to that family.
Yes, and I think this is the thing that a lot of people are missing, and I talk about this actually a lot in my book, is we see that, Aunt Jane lost $10,000 to a scam, and of course we feel bad and it's awful, and that's a significant impact to her. But there's bigger impacts because let's suppose Aunt Jane lost $200,000 and she's living in an independent living facility, and now all of a sudden she can't make her rent. Well, she has to move. Where is she going to move if she doesn't have any money? The odds are she's probably going to move in with her family, kids or grandkids. And so kids and adult children and adult grandchildren need to be aware of all of this, because the next thing they know is they're like, oh, mom's moving back in. And you might have a great relationship with your mom, but that obviously adds stress. Plus, it adds a financial burden on the family because you got to use electricity, water, food, right? All of that. But there's also a national impact, a community and national impact, because you're losing tax dollars. I mean, if you think about that $5 billion, I mean, maybe that's a drop in the bucket for the United States, but for a county to lose tax revenue for something, that would be a significant impact. And there's actually even a global impact, because not only you're talking about $1 trillion globally being lost to scams. So there's that trade revenue and lost income and all of that. But people are being trafficked to scam. Like, everybody is kind of aware of sex trafficking, which is obviously a scourge, but they don't traffic for sex because of sex. They traffic for money. And what these criminal organizations are starting to realize is that there is more money in scams than there is in peddling sex. So they're trafficking people in places in Southeast Asia and Malaysia to where they get people and they pack them in a hotel room, give them a script and a cell phone, and say, start making phone calls. And so there's global impacts to this as well. It's not just, Aunt May lost $10,000, which is bad enough in and of itself.
As far as the vulnerability, who is most vulnerable to being scammed?
Well, seniors are the most vulnerable, and I there's a lot of I've grounded a lot of my work in academic research. I am a researcher. I do teach. I have access to libraries and journal articles, and I ground a lot of what I'm doing in the academic literature. And if you dig through the academic literature, what you find is that there's five reasons that seniors are targeted more than anybody else. And this isn't in any particular order. It's not one is more than the other, but the five big reasons are isolation. If you're isolated, you're more likely to be a victim of scam, because if something comes across your phone or computer or something like that, you have nobody to bounce that off of. And when we talk about isolation, there's plenty of people that are single, live alone, but they're very active, and they're involved in their community or their church, and they go to book clubs or Bible studies, or they play pickleball or whatever they're doing, and they're interacting with people, and they're much more likely to say, hey, I met a new friend online. And a friend is going to be like, really? Wow. Well, tell me about that. And that's when the red flags start popping up, is when you start talking to people. So, but if you're living alone and, maybe you have some medical issues or something like that, or your parent has a medical issues and they're living alone, and you're just sewing and watching TV, you're going to be more at risk. The second vulnerability is what we call the tech vulnerability. And technology is moving at a lightning speed. We all know that. I teach technology. I have technical degrees. I have a bachelor's in computer science. I have a master's in cybersecurity, and I still can't keep on top of it. At some point, it's just exhausting. And if you're in your 60s or 70s, let's be honest, unless it's a hobby, like, wouldn't you rather be playing with your grandkids or playing pickleball or doing whatever, traveling, than reading manuals and trying to stay abreast of artificial intelligence? So the scammers know that, and they use technology against you. Particularly the artificial intelligence is really getting big right now in scams. And then, so that would be two. The third is finances. If you're a senior, you might not feel rich, but you probably have equity in your house, or you probably have some sort of savings. You might have Social Security, right? You have resources. I often like to tell the joke, my son's in the Navy, right? He's 21. He's been in the Navy for 2 years. He doesn't have two nickels to rub together, right? I mean, he's an enlisted E4. He doesn't have the money. So if somebody tried to scam him out of $200, he was going to laugh, because he's like, I don't have $200. He's still calling me for money, right? But as we talked earlier, seniors have the disposable income in a lot of cases, and the scammers know that. So we talk about loneliness or isolation, disposable income, the tech vulnerability. Believe it or not, there is academic research demonstrating that if you're over 60, you are more trusting than the younger generation. That's not an anecdote, it's a fact. This has been proven in numerous studies, particularly if it's negative information. So if I call you and you're over 60 and I'm in a position of authority and I say, guess what? We're all getting an extra $1,000 in the mail from the governor. You might believe that, but if I call you up and you're over 60 and I'm in a position of authority and say the governor is going to charge all of us another $1,000, you're really going to believe that. There's more of a chance that you would believe that. So when a scammer calls and says, oh my gosh, Duke Energy, our utility company here in Clearwater, we're going to shut your power off unless you make this payment, that's a position of authority and it's negative information. Seniors are more likely to believe that. And that doesn't mean everybody, of course, it's a continuum, but a majority of the people will. And the last factor is fear of embarrassment, and particularly with males. And again, this is rooted in literature, academic literature. Studies have shown that men are really ashamed, especially from that generation, because that demographic is used to the men handled the finances, they were used to that, and the next thing you know, you start getting scammed out of money. It causes this ripple effect, because then you're afraid to tell people, because then you're afraid you might lose some independence. And so this fear of embarrassment, and I should throw in there that studies have also shown that if you're a victim of scams once, you're more likely to be scammed again. So if you don't talk about it and you're embarrassed about it, you're more likely to be scammed again.
And could fall into it again. Mine is more anecdotal, about just observing, and even in my own family. And I tell people, like, you don't have to respond to every text you get. You can 100% delete, block. I mean, you don't owe them an answer. And so, and even pieces of mail, going through mail with someone, like what is something we should pay attention to and what is something that's actually soliciting you for something that maybe you're not interested in, you didn't need to know about in the beginning, right? So it is interesting that you say that, because I have witnessed that, and I tell people, like, permission to, and if it, like, it's not rude, but permission to not respond,
Right.
like
So,
not responding is safer than even engaging.
so I give quite a few presentations and seminars to groups, church groups, and independent living facilities, senior centers, and I get that a lot. Like, oh, I'm just so worried that I'm gonna make somebody mad or be rude, and I tell them, I'm like, if you're talking to a scammer, you don't have to be rude, right? You could just say, hello, I'm sorry. I just can't talk to you right now. I'm afraid I have to go do whatever, mow my lawn, whatever. Just, and I've even had some seniors say, well, I just can't lie, right? And that's fine too. But then that doesn't mean you can't say, I just don't want to talk to you right now. You
Hmm.
don't have to hang up on them. Just tell them no, right? And you can be polite. You're right.
Right.
It's
Just don't be that easy person, right?
right.
Because the easy you are, that's what they're looking for, those
Right.
direct hits.
And I think, along those lines, one of the things that really bothers me, and I hear this a lot in my presentations from the seniors that are there, is they talk about how they're like afraid to answer their phone.
Oh.
And to me, that is sad. I
Hmm.
hear all the time, people are like, I just don't answer the phone unless I know the number they're calling. But the technology is getting there now that people can spoof. They call it spoofing, when it looks like it's your son, daughter, neighbor, but it actually is somebody different, right? Even though that's what it says on the phone. So now I've gotten a lot of people that are saying, well, I just never answer my phone, never. And then I'll go back, listen to the voicemail. And then if it's somebody I know, I'll call them back. And to me, that is just shameful that these people who are in the golden years of their life should be living their best life. Some of them are living in fear, and that they they can't. That really irks me. So one of the reasons we started that is we want to get to the point where seniors are confident enough that they can listen to the phone call. Like, I get these texts all the time, and these phone calls, right? And I laugh and I look at my wife and I'm like, oh, there's another one. And then I just hang up. That's confidence, right? It's confidence in knowing this is a scam. And that's what we're trying to do with our education, right?
Yeah, and I love that, because exactly, like when you live on the fear side, a whole bunch of other things can happen. And when you have more power and control and agency over what's going on, even your phone. So, the phones are kind of like that opening to a lot of things. And now with the text, it's just a lot of energy to just even block and defend. I just had a clarifying thought about what you said earlier. Are some of these attempts just a one call? Because I know there's like romance relationships, and we could spend probably do a podcast a week on all the different kinds of scams. So I'm trying to stay more high level, but as far as like timeline, are some of these a one time attempt and like the utilities thing, and then some become like a relationship, or they're repeated enough that somebody breaks down? Like, what could you decipher between those?
Right. So you're right. There are dozens of different types of scams. And depending on who you are, whether you're a FBI investigator or a local county or a private investigator, they're categorized different ways. But there are roughly 10 or 15 different types of scams. They call the romance scam, the tech support scam, the IRS or the government impersonation scam, ransomware scam, right? And you're right. We could spend a podcast a week talking about them. But most of them are quick hits. They're the we're trying to get 50, 100, 150, 250, $500 from you and moving on. As I talked about earlier, but I think it's really worth repeating, a lot of these scammers, they shoot for lower dollar amounts because they're going for volume, and they know that if I lost $500 in a scam, I'm going to call the police. They'll take a report, but they're not going to do anything, right? So if they scam me out of a couple $100,000, now the police might start sniffing around. So scammers are aware of that. But, and I mentioned this earlier, yes, there are these one-off scammers, the guy in the basement or whatever, but more and more we're seeing organizations, criminal organizations that are running these scams in call centers like Atmospheres. And just like any business, they share information. So if one of these criminal organizations has exploited a list of phone numbers, they check off the ones that were vulnerable and sell that list to another scam corporation. So yes, but they'll do a different type of scam. So maybe it would be an IRS impersonation scam, or it might be, a ransomware scam or a tech support scam. The romance scam is one that we hear a lot about in the news, and because it tugs at people's heartstrings, because you're not just losing $200 or $500, you're losing a part of your heart, right? And you're being taken advantage of. And I have worked with clients who have had to go to counseling after not only did they lose $100,000, but now they had to go to counseling to get over the fact that this person that they spent 3 months investing all of this emotion into turned out to be in it for just the money. And then there's this other process that happens that's what we call the scam of the scam. That's what I call it. It's not a technical name, but let's suppose I call you, Lisa. I'm a scammer, and I'm able to develop a relationship with you, and I'm through different means, I get like $10,000 out of you through some sort of relationship, right? And it doesn't have to be like intimate. It could be platonic, because maybe you're just looking for a friend, right? Everybody thinks these romance scams are based on sex and stuff like that. A lot of them are just platonic. I just need a friend. Or maybe religion is a big one, where you have a connection and say, oh, I'm in Ukraine, and we're having a rough time right now, and I just really want somebody to pray for me. Well, if you're a Christian person or even Muslim or whatever, you're like, okay, I'll pray with you. And next thing you know, oh, I can't buy groceries this week. Can you send me $100? Oh, okay, I can do that, right? It's Ukraine. Next thing you know, the victim is out $5,000 or $10,000, right? And what happens after the victim figures out that there's a problem and stops calling? Well, the scammers will wait a week or 2 or 3, and then they'll call back, not the same person, but a new person, and say, hi, we're with XYZ Recovery Services. We understand that you've been scammed. Mm. And of course, you're going to be like, oh, yeah. And they're like, well, we're working with the police. That's too much work for them, so we're contracted out. We do take a slight fee, but we can get your money back. So if you can give us, $250 on a credit card, we'll help recover your funds, $5,000, $10,000, $15,000. And people will be like, well, sure, right? Who wouldn't do that? But then what happens is, okay, they'll call back and say, we've got your money. Can you give us your bank account information so we can deposit the money into your account? And it'll take 2 to 4 days. Well, what happens in those 2 to 4 days, right? They drain your bank account. Wow. So I don't know if that exactly answered your question about the frequency and stuff. I guess the answer is it depends.
Yeah, and they're complex. I mean, they have it figured out, right? So with some of the scam talks I've done here locally, it's like just raising that awareness of something doesn't feel right, or there's a sense of urgency, just to insert some level of time protection, because I feel like it's when everything is like right now, right now, right now, and there's that urgency and they don't want you to get off the phone. Like that alone to me is a red flag.
Obviously, I have dozens and dozens and dozens of war stories about these scams, and most people do. They have a friend or a relative that they know that got scammed. But the one that I'd like to highlight here that really got to me, it was when I very first started. It was kind of one of those things. that got me started on this is I mentioned I had a lady I used to teach with. She was a senior. I used to teach at a small high school, very small, and she taught middle school, and we were friends. We commuted sometimes because she lived close to me. And one day she called me and she said, "I think my husband is being scammed. Would you come talk to him?" And he was a senior as well. Smart guy, master's degree. He had a divinity degree. He had been a pastor for a while, and he'd been in construction management. Smart guy. And I went and talked to him, and he started laying out all of this information about this woman. And it was platonic. It wasn't, his wife knew about it. It wasn't some affair type of thing. She was a young woman in, I don't know, somewhere in the Eastern Europe. And she was divorced and she had a son and she was trying to go to law school. And it started with, "I can't get to school because I don't have bus fare." And he sent her $50, right? Well, within 3 months, he was sending her thousands and thousands of dollars. And so obviously his wife was concerned. She asked me, and I said, "Well, what evidence do you have?" And he gave me all of this stuff that she'd sent, information about her school, a driver's license, all of this information that she had texted her, or him. Well, I'm a private investigator, so I looked at, even though it's in Eastern Europe, I look all this information up. Guess what? None of it's true. So I come back the next day to present all of this information to him, all of the real information. This school does not exist that she says she's going to. This is not how the driver's license look in that country. Here are the banks that she says you're using. These banks don't even exist in that country. And I laid all that stuff out to him. And he looked at all that stuff and he said to me, "Well, I'm sure she has a good reason why she was making this stuff up. But she's a good Christian woman and I know she needs help." Like, that was, for me, that was an epiphany. Like, you could lay all of this stuff out and they were so emotionally involved in this relationship that they refuted the information that was right in front of them.
Wow, that is telling. That is powerful. Yeah, it's like the desire to really help someone. If they find somebody that has that really believes, that's a hard thing to shut off. Keeping up with technology, and I mean, heck, I don't know many that can at this point. We're all like learning daily, it seems.
Honestly, the biggest scams that we see right now are these quick hits. I'm sure if there's anybody in Florida, I think it's a nationwide thing, but the whole toll scam, right? You get a text saying you have unpaid tolls and we're going to cancel your driver's license unless, I mean, that was going rampant. I was getting one of those every day, and all my friends were like, right. Those are the ones, those are those small, quick hit ones. As far as deeper, longer scams that are like really impacting people financially, we see the romance scams, investment scams, and real estate scams. Those are the ones that are really impacting financially individuals because of that. But getting back to the artificial intelligence, some of it's being used on the back end that you don't even see as a victim. So they're using artificial intelligence to generate these texts, and right, you could just ask Chat GPT, generate a text and it'll generate 10 different versions of them, and then so you don't see that as a victim, you just get the text, right? Mm-hmm. But then more and more and more and more, we're seeing the artificial intelligence being used in the scam with voice sampling, video sampling, which is get rapidly approaching, but even website duplication. So you might get sent a link saying, "Oh, Amazon has shoes 50% off," and you click on a link and a web page shows up that has shoes that are 50% off, and that website was generated by artificial intelligence. And you don't know that, and when you click on you check out, you just gave $250 to a scammer And then you don't even know it until like 3 days later, the shoes don't show up, and you go to look at your Amazon account and go, where are they? And Amazon's like, you never ordered them because you ordered them through a false website. So artificial intelligence is it's gonna impact this from all different directions. So maybe this would be a good time to transition into, like, obviously the next question is, what do you do to protect yourself, right?
Yeah.
And to me, the first one is educate yourself, right? That's why I wrote the book, and I give the seminars, and we have information available on our website, and we're trying to push this out to get people to get educated. So the more you learn about scams, just like anything else, the more you learn about them, the better you will be armed. Other specific things you can do are in we recommend creating what we call a scam advisors list, and it's it can be, I mean, you can just do it on a piece of paper. We give a template, but where, okay, put a lawyer here. Who's the lawyer you would use? Who's your banker? Who's your financial planner or CPA? If you're involved in real estate, who's your realtor? Who's a buddy I can trust, right? Maybe somebody who's in their 70s, they're a little reluctant to talk to their kids or grandkids because they're afraid of losing their independence. So is there somebody that you could call and say, you're my scam buddy? I want to use you as somebody to bounce things off of. So that if I get a call from some person who's lost in Ukraine and wants financial help, I can talk to you about that. And I don't have to talk to my kids and lose, right? So create a scam advisor list. On that scam advisor list, we tell people to come up with a password or passphrase. Now, it doesn't have to be like, oh, the black crow jumped over the purple moon on a Tuesday in June, right? No, like, it could be simple of, like, for my son's 9th birthday, we took a big trip to Las Vegas. We saw Hoover Dam, the Grand Canyon. We went to Vegas, right? Where did you go for birthday on your 9th grade? For your 9th birthday, right? That's an easy one. Who would know that except for your family, right? That just make it simple like that. And then probably there are some technical tools that you can purchase online, and I don't want to spend all this time going over them, but there are tools to help reduce robocalls or prevent pop-ups on your screen, and that's a whole nother podcast really to be talking about how you protect yourself technologically. But to me, the most important thing is what we call the Stop Scamming Me protocol. And that's SSM, Stop Scamming Me. If you ever in a situation where somebody is pushing you to make a financial decision with urgency or fear, you need to stop. Stop. That's the first thing. Just stop. Why am I being pushed to make a financial decision? If you think about it, I've been around the block. In my 57 years, I have never, ever, ever had to make a significant financial decision in 30 seconds or less. It takes 30 days to close on a house, for crying out loud, right? I mean, so that's your first stop. And then you secure the information. What is it they want? Why do they want it? And what does that mean? Like, really? Duke Energy's asking for gift cards? Like,
For gold?
Gold, right? And then make your own connection. So SSM. Stop, secure the information, make your own connection. So if Duke Energy calls you and says, you're behind on your bill, you need to pay in $250 in gold bullion, then what do? You say politely, because we don't want to be rude, thank you for the call. I appreciate it. I need to verify this. I'm really sorry, but that's a lot of money and that's going to impact me. So I'm going to call Duke Energy right now. Thank you for the call. Do you have a name and an employee number that I can write down? 99% of the time you'll hear click, right? That's, if they give you some bogus information, write it down. But then you go find the information to call Duke Energy. And of course, there you go. Don't use any name or phone number or email address they give you. You make your own connection. That goes with banking. It goes with utilities. It goes even with personal relationships. So, online dating is the thing. My daughter is been dating a guy for 2 years she met online, and he's a great guy, and it's going to hopefully blossom into something, right? Um, but if somebody is online pushing you for something and it doesn't want to make any other phone calls or doesn't want to Zoom or right, all of that stuff, make your own connection. Find out about them. See, get their phone number another way. You can get anybody's phone number online nowadays, right? Call a private investigator. I'll find it for you, and it won't cost you that much, right? And use that. Use the tools to make your own connection.
Yeah. Well, that's a great, reminder again, the urgency and just to stop and give yourself that space. And anybody with good intentions is going to give you that. So make them, the biggest thing we can say is we're trying to make the least amount of victims we can out there. And so if you're the one that says, I got to verify this, can you call me back? I mean, just it may feel weird at the first time, but once you get it down, again, you can actually pick up your phone and take that call and hopefully make them stop. So, and then you're not the victim. You know, in the senior space, there's the scams, and then there's somebody in the family that may be financially taking advantage of someone, and other family members are concerned. And so I didn't know if you could give a little clarity on a scam versus a financial elder abuse moment.
So I talk about this a lot. There are differences. A lot of times people lump all of this together because they're a little uneducated, and that's fine. It's just the way it is. But there are four things that I will talk about. There's high pressure sales, there's fraud, there's scams, and there's elder financial abuse. So what are those differences? High pressure sales is somebody is pushing you to buy something, but they're offering a legitimate service or product. You see this a lot all the time. I'm getting things in the mail all the time. Please come to this dinner. We'll give you a free dinner at Ruth Chris if you sit through the 2-hour presentation. And then usually they're trying to sell you a financial product, or sometimes they're devoted into health products, right? Neuropathy, these types of things. Well, that's not illegal. That's totally legitimate. Technically, they're giving you something for your money. That's legal. That's high pressure sales. Timeshares is the classic example, right, of high pressure sale. Fraud is when you are taken for money without your knowledge or engagement. So the example I give is, let's suppose you call somebody to come fix something in your house, right? You call an electrician, these lights aren't working. Electrician shows up, fixes all the lights. That's key. They fixed the lights. They actually did the work. You write them a check, give them the check. They're supposed to go to the office and drop off the check. But before they go to the office, they go and they write down your account number and routing number off the check and the bank information. Then they go to the office and drop off the check. You are unaware of anything that's going on. You were right. That's all going behind the scenes, if you will. That individual goes home, logs into the computer, goes to buy something, and uses your bank account. That's fraud. That's bank fraud. And whether it's $20 or $200,000, it's still just fraud. A scam is in that same situation where somebody shows up, knocks on the door, and says, "I'm an electrician in the area. I'm working across the street, and I finished early. Do you have any work that you need? I'm just trying to pay off my daughter's college, and I'll cut you a good deal because I'm here and I don't have any appointments this afternoon." And you're like, "Well, sure, I have a couple of lights that need to be fixed." And they come in and they're like, "Oh yeah, well, I can fix that." Well, you're engaged, right? You're involved. And they say to you, "Oh, okay, I just don't have the right type of wiring. I'm just going to go to Lowe's and pick it up. Can I just ask you for $100 to cover that part of it, and then I'll pay, the rest of it will be $250, and I've fixed all your lights, but I need to go get the wire, and I would have charged you for that anyway because that's materials. Would you?" And you're like, "Oh, okay," and you give them a check for $100. They go cash the check at their bank, get the money, and they never show up again. That's a scam because you were involved, right? Financial elder abuse is when usually it's a loved one, but it can be a friend or a close friend, or I guess it's not even a loved one, but a family member, whether you love them or not, right? Is somehow taking advantage of you financially. And that can or cannot be illegal depending on the paperwork and what's going on. So let's suppose you have an elderly parent that had a stroke and you have a power of attorney over their bank account and you're paying their bills. And once a month you use their account to go out to dinner, right? Is that technically that is elder financial abuse? Because you're using their money without their permission and it's beyond the scope of the power of attorney. Now, is anybody? No, probably not, right? But if you're going on vacation on taking a $5,000 cruise and taking money out of their bank account, now that's serious financial abuse, right?
Yeah,
By
or
somebody
somebody's
who has,
down on their luck,
right.
somebody's not doing great.
There for elder financial abuse is when somebody is usually connected somehow. It could even be a guardian, like
Yeah,
a
a
guardian could
caregiver.
take.
Hmm.
It doesn't have to be a family member or a friend. Usually it is, but it could be anybody that has some sort of relationship, professional or personal.
Yeah. What would you suggest for adult kids out there that are hearing this and maybe they've had concerns or they have a raised eyebrow about something that's going on? And I know some of them can get so specific. Is there anything real high level that would apply to everyone that you could say,
Yes,
take this next step?
right. So if you hear, you know the vulnerabilities, we talked about them. We talked about, some of the issues that you might see and how to protect yourself. But if you suspect that if you're if you're an adult child and your grandparent or parent is possibly the victim of a scam, the first thing you need to realize is that they're feeling very vulnerable because they're afraid they're going to lose their independence. So you need to approach this with tact and understanding. Yes, seniors get scammed more than anybody, but everybody gets scammed. And I would propose to you that everybody has been scammed. Some people just don't even know it, right? So you need to go into this with an understanding for protection. And actually, believe it or not, the best method to kind of broach this is to get a third party involved. So I get a lot of calls from people, and they're like, Keith, you're a retired FBI, you're not related. Can you talk to my grandmother and grandma? I'm like, sure. And it might be a three-way call. Maybe they call me on their own, and they'll say, hey, this is what's going on, and I'll be like, well, that kind of sounds like a scam, and now it's an outsider saying it, right? We have a joke, and it's in my house, right? You could tell your son 10 times he needs a haircut, and he won't get it. But if he goes across the street to a neighbor's house and the neighbor says, oh, you need a haircut, guess what? He's going to go get a haircut.
Right.
And it's the same type of thing. So use that as a good tool. Help educate them. Uh, you know, uh, there's lots of information and resources out there. I mean, read the book, I guess, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and I was
That
just gonna say, yeah, and unless there's anything else, final words you want to say, I was gonna, go into that. That's a great transition. That your book, again, the name of it is Scam Smart, an expert's guide to spotting scams and living the fraud-free life. That is going to be available when?
mid-August, August 14th, 15th, 16th. We haven't nailed the day down, but it's in final edits right now. This thing, I just started writing notes on scams to keep them straight in my head. And later I had a book. And we cover a lot of what we've talked about here today, but most of it in a lot more detail. And there's a
Yeah.
good section on there, like getting scammed it's almost inevitable. So there's a good section in there, like what do you do when you're scammed, right?
Okay. And so that'll be coming out, and will that be on Amazon?
It will be on Amazon, and it'll be available in e-print, or you can have it printed. I prefer paper copies. That's just who I am, but a lot of people
Same.
like
Yeah.
e-print.
Okay. Well, great. And I'll also include your contact info in the show notes. So if anybody does think I need to reach out now, they have a way to find you as well. So, well, Keith, thank you so much for your expertise today. This has been a great conversation. It's something, like you say, that it affects all of us, but when it affects our mature loved one at that stage of life, the rest of us have a little bit more time to make it up. I think that we really just need to get the word out and protect our seniors more and more. So I really appreciate what you're doing and for sharing all this today here on the podcast. And I wish you all the best with your book and all your future endeavors with protecting seniors and their families.
Thanks for having me. I enjoyed the conversation.
Thank you. Thanks for joining me on Not Ready Yet, Curating Conversations for the Aging Journey. If something in this episode gave you clarity or the courage to start an important conversation, or offered a new way to look at things, I hope you'll share it with someone who might need the same encouragement. Remember, navigating aging isn't something we have to do alone or in crisis. With love, logic, and the right tools, we can face what's next with confidence and connection. Be sure to follow or subscribe so you never miss an episode. And if you're feeling generous, leave a review. It helps others find the show. And just a quick note, the information shared on this podcast is for educational and informational purposes only. It is not intended as a substitute for medical, psychiatric, legal, or other professional advice. Always consult a qualified professional for guidance tailored to your unique situation. This is Lisa Harper, and I'll see you in the next episode. Bye for now.